ready to do life and business on your terms and truly live your big ticket life. You either make excuses or you choose to level up. What amazing guests living the big ticket life. Woo! Woo! Brandon Brittingham.
Appreciate you having me here today, man.
It's that kind of discernment, that kind of focus, that kind of forward thinking that's so important if you're going to succeed in business today.
Jeff and I are like friends. We're real friends.
We are And so you unlock fortune and freedom without all the stress that normally comes along with it.
It all comes down to your why. Your business, why are you doing it? How is it going to change the world and what's it going to do for your family?
I want you to celebrate your success.
Talk about the struggle. But I promise you, the story is in your struggle.
They'll never be able to say that about me because people only see me working hard at anything that I'm doing whenever they see me.
Focus on your success and the success of those around you.
But being that constant in your community, good or bad, whether things are great in the community, bad in the community, who's steady?
Unapologetically do business and life on your terms and truly live your big ticket life. What amazing guests living the big ticket life. And we discuss how they do it and the big ticket methods they use. The things that make your life successful so you do life and business on your terms.
In and of itself, the only limitations that we really have on ourselves is the ones that we allow to be put on ourselves. And most people don't look at it in that perspective.
There's nothing wrong with being humble, but there's also nothing wrong with stepping into your superpower and letting people know who you are.
Get ready to do life and business on your terms and truly live your big ticket life. All right. Robert Nelson, welcome to the show. Happy to have you on. Yeah, so just so everybody understands who the man Robert Nelson is, you are the concierge for the Apex Mastermind community. And what we're brought here together, because I'm really interested in hearing more about this, is you're the director of the Apex Youth Program. You're an author of several books, including one you co-authored with, and I'm going to mess this name up, I think.
Og Mandino.
Og Mandino. That's what I thought, but pronouncing somebody's name is important to me because with a name like Janakovo, it matters, right? So anyway, you co-authored the greatest sales training in the world with Og Mandino. And you've been engaged in professional sales for decades, and your personal mission and passion is to inspire the spirit of entrepreneurship in the hearts of young people. And that's why we are here. I am loving it. On a side note, Robert, last night at our local school board meeting, I wrapped up a meeting with our superintendent to do a career camp. We're just kind of diving in. We're both tired of talking about it. We're going to be about it and do this career camp for kids because I so believe that is needed to show children that not that college is bad, but that there are other paths in life that may crisscross college, may start with college, may never get to college, but there's other opportunities to be successful in this world. And we're going to show them a bunch of amazing people doing just that. So, man, I'm happy to have you on the show. I'm
honored to be here.
Yeah. So you and I had lunch a few weeks back, now I guess maybe about a month ago. And I was really impressed and just connected to you on your thoughts about how we connect as humans. And we really should be dialed in on like shining a light, spreading joy, and just connecting with each other. Let's start there. Why don't you just kind of share with the listeners your thoughts? Because I found them powerful and I want everybody else to hear it.
Well, one of the things that has come to my awareness is that one of the greatest illusions on this planet is the illusion of separation. And it's one of the things that really creates this tendency of individuality, ego-driven, at all costs to succeed. One of the things about Apex is that we represent what winning looks like at all times, but not at all costs. You see, when we are conscious of the fact that we are all connected as one, then we'll be more prone to treat each other as we want to be treated. So for me, I liken it onto the atmosphere. So it's not my atmosphere, your atmosphere. It is the atmosphere, and we all use it. The consciousness that we possess is one consciousness. And there's so many people like yourself that are attuned to what the universe is speaking to you in terms of what your mission is, what your purpose is. Why are you here? Why are you doing the things that you do? Why you talk to the people that you talk to? Why do you address some of the issues that you address? And it's coming from some kind of core passion that's in you, that's driving you to do things you do. And oftentimes there's a commonality between people who resonate on the same frequency or about the same mission, even though they may have a unique aspect of the task that they perform in that mission. So that's really why I'm grateful to be on the show with you, man. You've been interviewing some powerful people. And I know you're a part of a very powerful network, and to have this opportunity to have a conversation about why we are addressing some of the issues that we're addressing to create a better world for us to live in. To me, I think that's important. So I'm honored to be here.
Yeah. And just on this note, I've given a lot of attention on the show to Apex. I don't get paid to do that at all. I don't want to get paid to do that at all. This isn't a paid commercial. But I think we'd be remiss right now, and we didn't talk about this in the pre-show, so I'm already throwing you a curveball, Robert. It kind of happens, right? So, and Ryan just dropped this in a weekly communication to the whole Apex group about how he went all in on $1 Million Mastermind coming up. So from you being a part of the team, so I look at what's about to happen with that event, and then sadly I can't make it because my oldest son's graduating high school, and I would be a hypocrite to miss that for my son. I would not be living my big ticket life out if I missed that. So anyway, but this event, $1 Million Mastermind, is an incredible event. I mean, he just dropped Tom Brady. The Tom Brady is going to be speaking, which, like, as far as I can tell, is this like his first kind of this event that he's done?
Based on my knowledge, yeah, he does a lot of events, but of this nature, I don't think so much. So, but I'm honored to have Tom Brady because he represents what winning looks like at all times. Needless to say, now there are a couple of other caveats to this process. People who are actually in the Apex community will also get an opportunity to have a private session with David Goggins, the hardest man on planet Earth. So for me, I've been going to these masterminds ever since they began, because the first event was more or less a reunion. It was a Break Free Academy reunion. And then we had started having masterminds since back in 2015, I believe it was. And they've been growing every year. Last year, I think we did maybe 1,000 people. This year's going to be about 5,000, anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 people at this event. And there has never been a lineup like this, to my knowledge, in one place. Now, Jeff, is really important. The reason why he's doing this is because there's so many people who are not inside of the Apex community. They don't even understand what we are, what we do. And there's so many people that are out here that want to succeed, that want to create connections, that want to get around winners, to create this atmosphere, this laboratory setting where they get a chance to see some of the most powerful and profound speakers in the world on one stage over the course of these 3 days, is really going to open up the eyes of a lot of people and cause them to start to believe in the possibilities that exist for themselves. And that's really what happens. When people come to these events, there is an electricity, there's an electric energy, and this is real. There's a vibration that emanates from that space because of so many like-minded people that are all about success, that are all committed to growing and leveling up to become the most elite versions of themselves. So it creates an atmosphere that's conducive to an epiphany. So it's like, boom, it's time for me to change my life. It's like, that's the kind of power that this event has, man, for real.
It does. And it's not your usual. I've been doing events for a long time. This community is unlike anything I've ever been a part of. And I've paid big money to be in big ponds with big people. And the connection hasn't existed anywhere else like here. So you owe it to yourself to get to $1 Million Mastermind 3-day event in June 3, 4, and 5. I really hope you go. Apex is something that's changed my life, and the connections I've made are just incredible. I mean, like the very first guest on the show was Sammy Knight. And if you don't know Sammy Knight by name, you know him by the company he helped make, quite possibly Mossy Oak clothing brand. Like I mean, you know, you're big time when you've got Grammy winning music artists talking about your clothing brand and their songs. And that happens. Like I hear that song, like that's my friend Sammy's company. And I can call him my friend. And that is the truth. And that's the kind of connections that happen. So it's just really, really cool. So now you and I are in tune. We like to make these connections and really foster them. But for you, like, so take us back. I mean, what's the timeline to bring us here together? Where did you start? What like kind of awoken you to like this connection, this atmospheric resonation where we can tune in and connect with one another? Take us back. Give us the timeline.
I'm glad you asked, but before I go there, I want to make mention of this. If you haven't gotten your seats to the $1 Million Mastermind and you get a seat to the $1 Million Mastermind, let me know, because I'm authorized to give you additional bonus value for those people who are getting seats to the mastermind. So reach out to me, let me know. Up to $5,000 in value I'm giving away, because we want as many people in that room as possible. So just let me know. But let me to your question, the reason I got started in this space, you know, as we start growing up from teenagers, you know, I was out there. I'm from Chicago, right? The ghetto, not the suburbs, right? I'm from the ghetto, right? The fact that I'm still alive is a miracle in and of itself, right? But I guess when I was in my 20s and I started to become conscious, which means I started to read, I started to pay attention. I started to realize that it's more about being on this planet than just running around in circles going nowhere fast. So as I started looking around my community, I noticed that a lot of the young people in my community were selling drugs on the streets as a way of making a living and perpetually getting in trouble, creating havoc. But the thought was, okay, here's a problem. And if you're becoming conscious, if you're aware of the fact that you have a responsibility to your environment, what are you going to do about it? So I went to one of my cousins who was like, I would say Nino Brown, the Wesley Snipes of New Jack City during the time, because he owned a Courtway building and he had distributors, he had manufacturers, he had marketers, he had collection people, and they were all running. He was running an enterprise, a major enterprise that covered most of the west side of Chicago, right? And I went to him one day. I said, dude, we got to stop this. We got to do something different. And he asked me this question. He said, what else am I going to do, right? And that really made me think, okay, you can't tell someone to stop a behavior unless you give them an alternative of something that they can get engaged in, particularly if that's the only thing they've known, right? That's all they're accustomed to. So for them, it's a norm. So it's like, no, this is not normal. Dying and killing and living this lifestyle is not really normal for the human species, but it was normal in our culture, in our community, right? From that moment is when I began the process of seeking out mentorship, because I was convinced that if they could sell drugs, they could possibly sell something else, but I didn't know how to sell, right? So I began to seek out mentorship. My first mentor was a man by the name of Paul J. Meyer out of Waco, Texas, a billionaire. He owned Success Motivation Institute. And one of the things that Paul J. Meyer did for me is that he introduced me to Og Mandino. You know, one day as I was in his office, he had these plaques, like big scrolls, long lining the hallway of his office. And I asked him, what were these? He said, these are the ancient scrolls from the greatest salesman in the world. I became fascinated. So I took it. And it's not an elaborate book. It's just a little book, right? It's a little storybook, really. But in it, there were principles, right? Principles are timeless. He talked about various principles that if you integrate these principles into your personality and begin to live your life according to these standards, your life will dramatically change for the better. So I began to do that. I began to apply the principles. I took the scrolls, I recorded them, I listened to them, I began to quote them verbatim, but they started to change the way I felt about myself and my whole internal belief system. My internal dialogue started to change. I started to see possibilities that I had been oblivious to before, even though they were right in front of me. So from then, I actually began to sell. And I went to the publisher and I said, dude, this is powerful. I want to teach this to young people. So I wanted them to learn how to integrate these principles so they can start selling in a more positive direction. So he said,
Right.
okay, I'll consider it if you will do something for me. So he asked me to write a foreword for one of our books. So I wrote the foreword, and then he gave me the commission to co-author the greatest sales training in the world. And in essence, what it is a commentary on the greatest salesman in the world. It's taking and breaking down some of those concepts and principles and showing you how to practically apply them to produce measurable results. I was privileged to have the opportunity to have testimonials from people like Paul J. Meyer, Les Brown, Mark Victor Hansen, Tony Robbins, and the list goes on, but they endorse the fact that these principles are what they utilize in their own experiences to achieve the success that they've achieved. So from there, I just began to get enthralled and involved with making sure I'm providing information and insight to young people. The last 2 years ago, I worked for Barack Obama's My Brother's Keeper initiative. So we taught, I specifically taught sales and entrepreneurship in high schools across the city of Fort Worth. So for me, that just seems to be a natural fit. Now I utilize the principles to become successful in sales, but the way I came into being introduced to Ryan Stillman was this. I was selling furniture, right? Belly to belly sales. This is not sophisticated sales, right?
That's right. Yeah. I remember reading that. So where'd you work?
I worked at the Dump.
Okay.
Which is
I
a
know that store
national
well.
chain. Yep. I happen to be the top salesperson in the country for that.
To the dump.
10 years. Yeah. So one day I heard Ryan Stillman talking on one of his broadcasts, and he said that if you're the top of your game and you feel like you really can't communicate with some people around you, you need to get around other people that are also at the top of their game so that y'all can connect and communicate. So I said, that makes a lot of sense. And I went to a breakfast with him. And as I began to see, because I was looking at the environment of how consumers were spending their money, consumers were starting to shift the way they spend their money, becoming a lot more savvy with the technology. They can price shop you right there in real time on the phone, right? They ain't play it. So the thought is that I need to learn how to leverage social media and digital marketing, which I didn't know, right? But Ryan Stillman was an expert in that space. So I hired him to coach me, to teach me, because I'd be remiss if I tried to teach sales and entrepreneurship to young people without including the component of leveraging this social media reality, because this is the world we live in now, right?
Yeah, it's the world. Well, we live in it, but they were born in it.
They were born in it, right? They naturally got a natural proclivity towards it. So Ryan started to coach me and ultimately gave me a job gave me an opportunity to work here. Originally, it was the Break Free Academy and it was the Tribe, but the organization has evolved over time. Originally, he had maybe 36 people that paid him like 25 grand to come to the table and him coach them as to how to leverage social media and digital marketing to build a machine. So they create a system of automation that can generate money while they're asleep, right? Well, what we found is that people are on different levels in their experience. Some people are just maybe employees or solopreneurs. They just want to level up. They want to improve the quality of their life, want to increase their revenue stream. They have a different conversation going on than somebody who is an employer and has a team of employees that they're responsible for. So they have different problems. They need different solutions. So there are different tiers in the organization. But then we also have people who are executives, people who are already very successful, but they're looking for new ways and means to make their money, They want the money to work for them. They don't want to work for the money, right? So they're doing investments in different areas.
There's a lesson there that came from Ryan that I've really been taking to heart since joining executives, and that's never work for the same dollar twice.
Right. That's profound. That's powerful.
And I mean, it really is. I mean, and when you take that, to kind of circle this back to your passion for youth, I mean, I think if you take that one statement and drive it in to the modern educational system that our kids are exposed to, you would make, and this isn't a knock on business teachers, it's not a knock on teachers in general, but it would make their head spin. Because our society at large has just kind of grown up with the idea you go to work, you make your hourly wage, and that's the money you get, and you pull your bootstraps up and just go do more, right? And the reality is there's a whole other way to go about this life. And that one statement, never work for the same dollar twice, is really profound. And when you begin to open that up and peel those layers back, it opens up a lot of things.
Now, one of the things that I really love about this community is the fact that people like yourself, who are subject matter experts in a variety of spaces, right? We got people who are in virtually almost every industry that you can imagine that are successful. We're talking 8, 9-figure earners, right? The thought of being in a community like this where people are actually applying the principles of business to produce results and impact the economy, that is a very rare audience to find in one location, right? So these people come in like once a month, like we getting ready to have a fly-in Friday, this coming Friday, and people fly in
Tomorrow
from all
afternoon
over to come in and actually get the direction and correlate, collaborate, and build rapport with one another to create greater impact. So for me, it was just a natural fit. In fact, since the time I started working for Ryan, I had always been telling him, I said, dude, I got to do something with these kids, because that's why I hired you to coach me in the first place. But I think it's probably about maybe 8 months ago, 6 or 7 months ago, one of the young people that is a grandson of one of our Apex members actually had an assignment in school. This dude's 12 years old. And his assignment in school was to give a story about, tell us somebody that you look up to and want to become like when you grow up. And he picked Ryan Stewman. He picked Ryan because, one, of his humor, 2, of his authenticity, 3, because of his impact and his power in his leadership, because he's leading leaders, right? This dude's not just leading followers. This dude is leading leaders. And when he made that expression, Ryan was touched by it, right?
Yeah.
And I said, dude,
no kidding.
I told you we need to do something with these kids. They need some help. They need to get plugged into this community. They need to start being exposed to some of the principles, some of the fundamentals about money. They need to do that before they get upside down in student loan, can go into college to try to get education in the space that they may never pursue, right? Don't make any sense. So he said, well,
it really doesn't.
That's why we started with creating the Apex Youth Program. And now we have several youth that are in the program. We actually have scholarship options available so that they're being sponsored. When they come to the table, Jeff, one of the things that I really admire, I really like about the mechanism is we use the same principles that we use in the Apex, right? Create a Dream 25, create a message, make an offer, and put it in front of your audience. Follow up with that audience and close and convert more sales. So what we do is we engage them in a fundraiser. And Adam Miller has actually created the automation behind this. All they're doing is sending out text message that we prefabricate for them to get support for their initiative. Now, part of our obligation, their obligation when they come to the table, is that as we help them succeed, they're eventually going to be responsible to make sure they help somebody else succeed, because it's all about reciprocity and giving back. And if we don't teach them by example and build that into the culture, they're going to be inclined to repeat the same mistakes that their ancestors have created, right? So it's about building this framework and creating this bridge so that they can have an easier path, not to make that they don't have any trouble, right? We want them to be able to break their own shell. But the thought is, there's so many people around us that have such a wealth of knowledge that they need to be corralled in this incubated kind of environment where people care about their well-being and providing them with some good information on how to move forward and flourish.
Yeah. I mean, and I love the fact that you've got you as a focal point, as a leader of Apex Youth within the community, which that in itself says our community believes we're attached to a leader that believes giving back is important, and we're going to put somebody on payroll to actually go do that. Right. So I think that's great. Then you've got the support from the community to talk about it, bringing you right here. Support. We're going to amplify this. I mean, I'll be able to timestamp out this and make it its own little nugget, right? And send it out. So you by now you've probably got a couple wins because it is children. I don't know if you want to name them by name, but if you do, and their parents are okay with that and they're okay with that, go ahead. But if you want to just talk about them as we have this boy, we have this girl doing something,
we've got
share some success stories.
Here's a success story. There's a young man, and he actually joined the Apex some time ago. His name is Nathan Gardner, right? Nathan Gardner came to one of our $1 million masterminds, and he was already an entrepreneurial minded young man, right?
Yep.
At the age of 16, Nathan created an invention, and it was like a golf ball dispenser. At the age of 16, he sold his business for $2 million. At the age of 16.
Wow.
Now he's 20. He's 20, right? And he's actually engaged in selling on Amazon, doing maybe $500,000 or more a year, just selling on Amazon. But the thought is he's always had this entrepreneurial proclivity. He always wanted to sell something. He would do lawns when he first started out. So I see the same trait in some of the other young ones. I have a young man that is developing an app for like food carts. So like when you go to a place where they have a collection of food carts, rather than you have to filter through all the food carts, you can be able to pull up the app just like a McDonald's app, identify the products that you want on there, and then even make your transaction on the app. But what's really cool about this to me is that when they start.
So wait a minute. So that app. So if you're at an event where there's 12 food trucks, the food truck owners can pipe their menu into that app. That app probably by GPS knows you're at the Houston, Texas Food Truck Festival or whatever. And the menus populate in that moment
in real time. And they can do transactions. That's brilliant, man.
That is like there are so many people that hit you up for apps, right? Like there's so many apps out there. And I think if you just follow the 80-20 rule in the app game, and really in any game in life, out of 100, 4 of them actually have, success. And then out of that 4, 1 out of 4 is like going to be super successful.
Right.
That is a brilliant idea. And that came through the Apex Youth program.
Through the Apex Youth, right? In fact, this young man, his dad is an Apex, I believe he's Apex Entourage, right? But one of the things that I thought was very cool about this experience, we have our own private group for the Apex Youth. So there may be a couple of hundred people that are in that private group, right? And when you join the Apex Youth, you can actually access that private group. Well, the young people that are in there, they ask questions, and I encourage them to ask questions to get answers, to get some direction. As the concierge for the Apex community at large, he asked a question about developing his app. So I took his question and I posed it in the entourage, and people began to chime in, wanting to help this young guy make his deal happen. That's the power of this community, man. There are people who are already very proficient in the development of apps. So he actually has a connection that if he were just on his own without access to this community, he could be looking for years to try to find some support or some direction as to how do we execute a plan like that. But that's what I love about this relationship, man.
Yeah. I mean, that's just that is so cool to hear how that app came to be from a young person. I mean, look, you're listening to this, whether it's on one of the video streams or later in the audio. By the way, Robert, audio comes out about a week from now.
Okay.
There's a lot of people that kind of talk about kids and, computers and screens. And, we talked earlier about how kids are born into social media. I'm positive there's a kid on this earth right now. Their birth was live streamed on Instagram or something. Like I'm positive it's happened.
I'm sure it is.
And it wasn't for like a medical journal purpose. It was just mom and dad doing it because they thought it was appropriate. And maybe it is. That's not for me to judge. But these kids today, the world that they're creating and the world that's around them and the world that they've inherited is good and bad all at the same time. I think there's things we could talk about, good and bad. But the fact that a young man saw an opportunity like that and then people came and surround, that's the power of connection. And I think, if we kind of go back to like where our educational system is, I don't know, like, do you think kids are getting that kind of like, hey, reach out and make a connection, or are they getting put on a different path?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because yesterday, Sebastian Russ sent me some information about him speaking at a high school. And it seems that more and more schools are starting to become sensitive to the fact that we need to give them more than just this history, geography, and science. They need to understand something about business. They need to understand about innovation. They need to understand something about market, right? So he was speaking to a group of kids that were there for that purpose. Now, even though they are starting to become aware of the necessity to provide this access to information, they still don't have the connectivity like we have with a collection, a network, a mastermind network of people that are the top of the game. That's what Apex means. These are people who are the tip top of the game. They're the 1% of the 1%, right? But I wanted to mention this because I found this to be very fascinating. There's a young lady, this girl is 13, man. Isabella Constantino. Her dad is an Apex executive, right?
Yep.
Her mom is also in Apex. So Isabella, and she's a boxer, right? Isabella came to the table and she came with her authentic expression of herself. She put together a video. She made an ask. I published it, and people came and supported. People like Sammy Knight and some other people in the community came and supported her. She raised more money than she needed to raise for her particular project. So there's money that spilled over to help some other young person. But this is what amazed me. As I was on the phone and going back and forth doing some coaching sessions with Isabella and some of the other ones, Isabella was fascinated by the phone sites, which is a Ryan Stewman product, right? And she wants to develop phone sites. It just so happened I was doing a coaching session with her mom, who had just recently joined Apex. Her mom needed a project done, right? She has a business that she's been in for some time that she's worked a job at, but she's getting ready to do her own venture. So she needed a project done. Just so happens that between the phone sites, coaches, and administration and Isabella secured a client before she even got access, finished raising her funds. So she had a client in the wings that was waiting to be served, right? So this is the kind of community. One of the things that's powerful about that, and you may have listened to this at some of our sessions, is that as a business owner, you can actually employ your children, and it's a tax write-off that you could actually help them to grow and flourish. So it's a mutual benefit. Now you got help doing some things, particularly when you got somebody like Isabella that learns how to work the technology that her mom wasn't familiar with. You know what I'm saying? So there's so much what I call symbiotic relationships that we can benefit from just by connecting and being together as one, operating as one. Yeah.
There's no doubt. I mean, what kids know today, because they are so connected to technology. They were born into it. It's almost like machine and mech, like machine and man, mecha are one.
Board. Yeah, you're right.
Which I say it and I kind of cringe, but like it's just the truth. So you may as well not fight it. You may as well use it for its benefits and ignore and constrain its negatives, right? Like that's the way I look at it. Like in your Facebook feed, my Facebook feed, it isn't toxic because we just got a bunch of people who are doing what we're doing in our Facebook feed. Right. And that was all intentional on our parts to connect with smart people, people that are into the Apex way of life, right? Representing what winning looks like. So like that's what I mean. Like it's good and bad, but you can control that bad. Anyway, you were going to say about Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins and Dean Grazioso, they have a mastermind organization. Now, Tony Robbins is probably one of the most influential personalities on planet Earth. But do you know that their company, their organization, the people that run the social media are kids, young people.
Really?
Yes. So what you saying is powerful, man. Once they understand and they can navigate those tools, there's so much value that they can bring to the market at large. But as adults, we need to recognize that value and get them engaged so they can continue to cultivate and develop their skills, their creativity, their ingenuity, man. And this kind of atmosphere, I think, is conducive for that because the people that are in this community are constantly thinking in that way.
Yeah. I mean, I shared at the top of the show. I'm very excited about this at a local level in my neighborhood. And we've talked about, again, it actually happens to be Teacher Appreciation Week. I think teachers, it is. Yeah. I think teachers in our educational system are wonderful people. I think they do a job our society needs. It's kind of like water. It's kind of like having a fire company in your neighborhood. Like it's important, that said, our kids are changing the way they're learning. I think the bureaucracy of educational departments and at the state and the federal level slows things down, like our school, and this comes right from our current superintendent's mouth. It's like, hey, our financial course is about balancing a checkbook. Well, that's outdated, because you need to understand how a checkbook balances, but because you have all of your banking apps right there, like you can see in real time what's happening. You don't need to wait for the once a month mail statement to come through. And he said, we need to update our kids better. So actually, I'll put it out to you and then I'll follow up later this week with the community. Like I want to bring forth to this career camp we're doing, I want to bring forth a crypto, blockchain, NFT person that will be willing to dial in on a virtual presentation to talk to these kids, because I don't know anybody locally that's doing it, but like that's where the future's going. And even if you think crypto is crazy and you think NFTs are crazy, the underpinning technology of it is here to stay. And it would be immense. I'll share a real world application where it'd be immensely helpful. My son's truck, antique, beautiful truck. The title is off by 1 digit. And it's off by 1 digit because somewhere in the Pennsylvania DMV department, somebody made a human mistake. And we can't fix the title. No matter how many times I pay to fix the title, we can't fix the title. But originally, that title was attached to the VIN number accurately. And had that title been on blockchain technology, I wouldn't have just spent the last 30 seconds talking about it. It'd be a non-issue. Right. And that's where that's where this stuff comes from. So yeah, maybe the excess, the nonsensical aspect of digital currencies and blockchain will go by the wayside, but the underpinning technology will be here to stay. And our kids are into it. Right. They are very much into it. And that's the kind of thing that our educational system is lacking and will continue to lack, because it's going to take 4 years of bureaucratic red tape to bring it into the textbooks.
So,
and by the time it gets brought into textbooks, they're talking about 22 stuff and it's 26.
Right. So you say you're going to have an event like a career day, right?
We're doing a whole week.
A whole week. So I've got somebody.
A whole week.
Is somebody is actually in Apex, and he's a young person that is into the NFT crypto world. He actually started by doing e-commerce. And this dude is doing awesome. He's 20. He's doing 8 figures, right? At the age of 20, playing this game. So he's mentioned that he would be more than willing to share with other young people. In fact, he actually provided some coaching for Ryan Stewart. When Ryan Stewart first started buying NFTs. Oh,
I know who you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about. So this is real. So everything you're saying is valid, man. And it's essential that we take advantage of the resources we have at our disposal.
Yeah, absolutely. So normally my shows go about an hour. Robert is a consummate professional. So he's got something at the top of the hour, and I want to give him time to be able to come in and prepare. So we've got a little bit of time left with each other. So we'll clue the audience in. So I sat down with Robert, like I said, about a month ago, to just get to know you, find out what you're all about. But I did have a question, and that question was around race and culture and the overlay on our society. Because, you know, I've shared a couple times on the show, I'm very involved locally in our school district. I'm not a teacher. I'm not paid. I'm just a parent, taxpayer. I've got kids in the district. And I'm concerned on a number of fronts with how our kids are being taught, what they're being taught. And I'm especially concerned with minority children, how they're being taught history and what their future looks like, and what our educational system says needs to happen first before they can succeed. And I really take issue with that. And we talked about that at length. So out of our conversation, you know, I said to you, I said, I can't have this conversation, but I feel it's an important conversation to have because I see you, Robert, as an African-American. I see you as somebody successful who lived in a different time than today, a different time than our kids. I see a lot of people, Hispanic, Latino, Asian, African-American, I see in Apex. And I said to you, what are your thoughts about bringing those people together to show, you know, in a little kind of virtual event like this, so we can show children, people who look like them, came from neighborhoods like them, live a culture like them, that you've achieved success. And Robert, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. How old are you?
I'm 60.
60. Okay.
60.
So yeah, you've seen some stuff.
I've been here for a minute.
Right. You've been a part of this history, and your parents 100% were a part of history.
Definitely.
You know, I mean, your parents lived in our nation at a time where they weren't able to vote. Is that right? That's an accurate statement, correct? If I'm thinking about the time.
That's true, dude. I come up in the civil rights era, so those are my roots. But it's funny that you mentioned that, because one of the guys that won the closer contest, Mr. Bolanos, right?
Bolanos, yeah. Patrick is awesome.
Patrick has a cultural background as well. But it's something that you said that I really want to touch on, and that is this. When you mention about the construction or the structure of our educational system and the antiquated nature of much of it, you have to give consideration to this reality. When education was originally designed in the United States of America, it was designed as an instrument for creating workers. Creating workers. They wasn't just trying to enlighten people. They was like, I need somebody that can do this job. It's like building, I need to build me a slave, right? So I'm gonna give him the tools he needs to work for me. So the people that control the structure of education, the method, the purpose for which they created it, it served its purpose. And yet the world has evolved since then. And the systems have not modified. So the reality is that we see so many deficiencies because we've changed, but the structure, the bureaucracy, and the mechanisms that were initially installed have not changed. So we're about making those adjustments now. This whole relationship that we have with Apex, with the young entrepreneurs and that type of thing, it's all about creating that kind of connectivity. But this is something I want to speak to as it relates to culture. There are many people that are not racist. They're not racist. I mean, they may be different cultures, but the reality is that the systemic racism that has been created and ingrained within the fabric of this country doesn't just disappear overnight. Imagine that you're running at 120 miles an hour, right? We've been running like this for the last couple of 100 years. And then people say, okay, well, it's time to stop that. We're not going to be racist anymore. But the momentum is there. Inertia is continuing to carry it. So a lot of these institutional structures, policies, and procedures are still ingrained with that same racist fabric. So the thought is, how do we go in and dismantle it? It's not enough to just ignore it and say, okay, well, you know what, I'm innocent, but the system is still functioning, right? So something's got to be done about it. But one of the things that I've learned is that the only way to create change is to first understand that an issue exists. If you ignore the fact that it exists, change can't begin to take place.
Right.
So the fact that you've touched on some of those things and some of the stuff that you shared with me was powerful, man, because you see it firsthand. So we understand.
Well, and you know, and I shared with you, you know, I coached youth football. And real quick, we have a question. We've had a couple questions. We have somebody, Tom Matson, who's a friend of mine from my world. He knows Og. He says he's the best. Stu Segura, right from like my mattress world. I think he's coming to MDM. He's got his VIP ticket because I put it out to my sphere, and so I think he's coming to MDM as a result of that. And then Kyle, local friend, Slaymaker Method, he's got a question. Would you say, Robert, that Apex Young Entrepreneur Program is the best thing to happen to youth?
No, I won't.
Oh,
this is what I will say. The best thing to happen to them is when they parents like you, Mr. Slaymaker, like you, Jeff, when they wake up and they say, you know what, we have an opportunity, not only a responsibility, but we have an opportunity, because this is what happens. Anytime a young person gets involved in a program, and I'm speaking from experience of working with Barack Obama's My Brother's Keeper initiatives sometime, and we would go in, get them inspired, motivated, and start providing them with some guidance and instruction, and then they would leave our sessions, go home. And if the mindset in the home is not adjusted, the behaviors revert. So the best thing to happen is when the parents start embracing and engaging with their own young people on a one-on-one basis, because that becomes permanent change, not temporary.
Yeah, amen. It does. And that kind of dovetails right back to before I went through our comments there. So I was beginning to share, you know, I coached youth football for a while. So I got, you know, we have a pretty diverse neighborhood, about a third Hispanic Latino, third Black, third white kids. Right. And, you know, so pretty good mix. And the one common thread I saw of the kids who had the best attitudes, the highest spirits, they were on time, was family. Mom and dad were, and even if mom and dad were divorced, they were positively co-parenting their child. And there were a couple families I met grandparents, and to me that was really special, right? That the grandparents were there to watch their 7 to 11-year-old play football. And I brought to my local school, I said, you know, we're talking about all of these fabrics of society, all of these things that exist, but you're preaching to these kids and you're saying we need people at the front of the room who look like them, have lived like them, who have these experiences, but you're not inviting in these people who have lived it. I have sat beside a man who was not able to vote in our nation, and he's watching his grandson, and this man owns rental property, a bunch of it. This man needs to speak to our kids because he can talk about the realities, but he can also talk about, while these realities exist in our nation, he still found opportunity. Right. And that's the kind of change I want to bring to kids. So that's what you and I are going to put together with, I guess we're calling this the cultural corner. You know, I'm never so hung up on names as I would just want the substance to be good. Right. But that's what we're going to call it, cultural corner. And refresh my memory again, because I've been going a mile a minute for the last couple of weeks, but we've got Gladys Jeanette. She's going to be involved. Ashley Herrera, who's been on the show.
Mr.
Bolanos, which is awesome.
And I believe it's Fabian.
Okay. Yep. I don't know Fabian yet.
So there's several people. Yeah, he's an Apex executive, but there's several people. But one of the things that I want to mention about this part of the process is this. Some time ago, maybe I think it's round about COVID time, Ryan Stillman put out a challenge, and it was a 7-day challenge. He said, well, I want you to talk about something live every day for 7 days. And what I did was I talked about counteracting racism, right? One of the things that really needs to happen is mutual sided. When you start to understand something about the diversity or the distinction in other cultures, you start to develop a greater appreciation for the uniqueness of that society, that group of people. So a part of this process of this cultural corner is to share our individual stories, but we are all part of a collective mastermind that are all like-minded people. So the spirit is the same. The spirit of the people who are part of this mastermind, but the experiences that they come through, like Mr. Bolano's experiences, some of them are rather daunting. But the thought is, if you don't know somebody's journey, you can't really connect and identify where they are right now, because you don't know what it took for them to get there. And when you start to develop an appreciation and listen to at least share your story and get some insight about somebody else's story, there's a greater degree of human empathy. And we can cohabit this planet more effectively without all the stigmas. Let's keep it real.
There's no doubt in my mind when we can understand what each has gone through, when we can understand what each has been up against, we can start to see, all right, well, maybe I can do something about it now because now I understand, right? And I'm excited to bring these stories of Gladys, Ashley, Fabian, Patrick. I want to connect with Pedro Meneses.
Yes,
there's another one. I mean, Pedro's got a great story. So
yes, he does.
I want to bring a really great mix of people in to share and not sugarcoat. Like I think we're gonna get pretty raw, right?
Really,
and that's okay. And I want to share these stories so that people understand there is struggle, but there is opportunity, and here are people who've done it. And every one of these people, I think, are more successful than I am. And I love that. Love it. Because I celebrate success. That's part of this show's title and what we say. Literally, I love it that people are more successful than me on this show as my guest. I love it. So I'm excited for this.
When you share this out to your audience, if there are some other people that want to be a part of that process, I invite you. You can reach out to me. I'm accessible. And let me know because
we've got
people on every end of the spectrum, man.
Yeah, we've got Robert's contact info in the show notes. Obviously, you know how to get a hold of me in the same way. So you can reach out to either of us. We're both on Facebook. So you can contact us any number of ways, and we'll put this together. And we're going to start maybe with one episode or a couple. Who knows? But I see nothing but positive coming out of this. And again, it's for these children, because I think all the messages coming out our kids nowadays, I can understand why our kids are confused. I really do. I don't fault them at all. It's not the time I grew up in. It's not the time Robert grew up in. It's a different time, and they need to see people succeeding in spite of the roadblocks in front of them. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to bring that to light. And I'm excited to do it with you, brother. Really am.
You know, one of the things that you touched on, and I want to just mention, and that when as working with Barack Obama's My Brother's Keeper initiative, our job was to help young men of color transition from one life stage to another. One of the things that we saw, particularly in the communities of color, is that a higher percentage of them don't have fathers. And one of the things that we teach, that in order to be a man, you got to be able to see a man. So when people see people from different cultures that are achieving, like you said, your friend that you were sitting beside, they get to start to believe in the possibility of their achievement as well. So it's all about creating that awareness and that exposure. So I think that this is a brilliant idea that you have, man. So that, I mean,
and I know you need to get going, but you know, I always want to really drive home points for our listeners. And that one, you know, if you've got a father in your life and you had a good father in your life, try to be a greater father to your children, right? I will tell you the saddest experience coaching youth football was when one of my boys, I won't say by name, just because I'm just not going to do that. But when he thought his dad was going to come and he didn't, and it crushed the kid, crushed him. And it was the saddest moment of coaching, not losing games, not losing close games. We had a couple kids get injured, not bad, but a couple broken arms, right? That was the saddest moment. And it happened a couple times, not just the one kid, but a few. And that is the saddest moment. And so if you can mentor a child that doesn't have a dad around, do it. If you had one around, honor that man and be better, because that's what he would want if he's not here. And if he is here, show him that you learned, for sure. Because that's big ticket living as far as I'm concerned. Family should be the greatest thing you do.
Indeed. Now, you know, Cat Peterson and Adam Miller put together a what he called Bridge Builders Collaborative. And a part of what they're doing is creating avenues of opportunity. So doing like the students that got funded through Apex, it went through Cat's nonprofit organization. That's how they got financed.
Yeah, I read that.
Right? So the thought is that this ability to create these bridges so that they can cross over, man, is a part of this whole mission, this whole passion that I feel. And I want to share this statement, this message. And it's a simple poem. And it goes like this. An old man traveling a lonesome highway came in the evening cold and gray to a chasm deep and wide. The old man crossed in the twilight dim because the sullen stream held no fears for him. But he turned when he reached the other side, and he built a bridge to span the tide. Old man, cried a fellow pilgrim near, why are you wasting your strength with building here? Your journey will end with the ending day, and never again will you pass this way. I mean, you've crossed the chasm deep and wide, so why build you a bridge at eventide? The builder raised his old gray head. He said, good friend, on this path I've come, he said, there follows after me today a youth whose feet must pass this way. This stream which has been but naught to me, to that fair-haired boy may pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight dim. Good friend, we're building this bridge for him.
There we go. That's a fantastic way to wrap the show.
Bridge, my brother.
We are, my friend.
Yeah.
Love it.
All right.
Thank you for being on the show. I know you've got to go lead, and I want you to have time to effectively lead for those people. This has been a great show, man. I appreciate you. I look to continuing to do life with you. And I guess I'll see you in a couple of days down in Texas.
Peace. All right.
See you, man. Sir. All right. See you next time on A Big Ticket Life. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode of The Big Ticket Life. You've heard from another amazing guest living their own big ticket life, and now it's time to live yours. First, I'd love for you to take me up on my free gift to you. Claim your gift at gift.thebigticketlife.live. That's gift.thebigticketlife.live. See, all your life you've been told what is and what isn't possible by the loudest voices from the cheapest seats. It's time to finally do life and business on your terms. Sure, you've heard similar things, but without clarity on what can be done, It's easy to have your customers, employees, maybe even partners, and your spouse keep you from truly living a big ticket life. My big ticket methods shift you into that investor seat in your business, away from commodity and away from competition, into a market of one, so you can finally live your own big ticket life. So my gift to you is for you to book your discovery call today, where we'll uncover first the Chivo behaviors, those chief everything officer behaviors that hold you back, and why moving into the investor seat in your own business is critical. 2, we'll uncover the premium position that's up for grabs right now in your market that you're missing out on. And 3, which big ticket methodologies are just waiting to be dropped into your business to explode your sales and profits. So again, thanks for listening to this episode. I'd love for you to take action right now. Accept this gift. Book your call. Go to gift.thebigticketlife.live. Again, that's gift.thebigticketlife.live.